Live NFL trivia every Wednesday night on Twitch at 9 p.m. Eastern. Come show off your football knowledge for a chance to win cash prizes. Check the link in the description to find out more. And now, on with our feature presentation. Before he made a mess of Arizona State football, a wise man once said, "You play to win the game." And as simple as that quote may be, it rings true. You play to win the game. You should always do whatever it takes to walk away victorious, and you shouldn't settle for less. If you're doing something that doesn't increase your chances of winning, then what's the point? Why are we doing this if we're not doing it to win and have more points on the scoreboard? Heck, one of the most frustrating things I've ever seen in a game came in 1977. When the New York Giants played the Atlanta Falcons, the Giants were down by 2 possessions with under 2 minutes left, they had no timeouts, and they decided to punt the football away. You can learn more about that disaster of a decision by clicking the card in the upper right corner. So yes, you should always play to win the game. However, this is not an absolute statement, and common sense needs to apply. Yes, winning would be nice, but part of being a good leader is knowing when it's time to walk away. There are times where you need to throw in the towel and wave the white flag, and say, today is not our day. We'll get them next time. This might not necessarily be true in untimed sports like tennis and baseball, but in timed sports like football, this is absolutely true in the regular season. In basketball, if you're down by 25 points with a minute left, you can chuck up all the threes you want. You're not winning the game. In hockey, if you're down by 5 goals with a minute left, you can pull the goalie, be up 2 on the power play, and play 6 on 3 the rest of the way for all I care. You're not winning the game. That's not to say you shouldn't try to finish the game out, but there is no reason to have your starters in the game. Nothing good can come from having LeBron James play the final minute of a game where his team is down by 20. There is no reward whatsoever, and the risk is obvious. Your franchise player gets hurt and takes a beating. And in all the situations you've watched in the last minute, looking at the score, I don't think there's one where a single person would honestly think to themselves that the losing team has a chance at winning. It's just not possible. There are some moments where you just have to know when to call it quits. If only Packers head coach Mike Sherman got the memo. Of all the people named Mike to be named the head coach of the Packers in the post-merger era, Mike Sherman was definitely one of them. He was definitely a head coach. And in 2001, when the Green Bay Packers played the Minnesota Vikings in a big NFC Central matchup, Sherman did something absolutely stupid that jeopardized the career and the health of his franchise quarterback and one of the greatest to ever do it. And let's just say that the backlash he got from this decision was significant, and rightfully so when you realize just how stupid this was. This is the story behind Packers head coach Mike Sherman and what had to be the stupidest moment of Brett Favre's entire career. Before I talk about the incident in question, we need some context to understand the game, how the game was going, and how Brett Favre was playing going into this one. It's October 21st, 2001, and we have a big NFC Central matchup on our hands between the Green Bay Packers and the Minnesota Vikings. Even if you didn't know this was a big matchup, you were able to tell because the legendary duo of Pat Summerall and John Madden were on the call for Fox. And anytime they got your game, you knew it was a big deal. As a side note, to learn more about that legendary announcing pairing, click the card in the upper right corner. This game was big for the Vikings, as they were 2-3 and needed to win this game to avoid being below 500 after 6 weeks and falling 3 back of the division lead, especially since not a single one of the 12 teams to make the playoffs the year before in 2000 was below 500 after 6 games. If they didn't win this game, it would be a massive uphill climb the rest of the way for them to claw their way back into things. But for the Packers, this was a big game for a very different reason, as after an incredible start to the season, they found themselves at 4-1, atop the NFC Central as one of the best teams in football. A win here would keep their hold on first place, while a loss would drop them to second in the division, since the Chicago Bears, who won earlier in the day, were 4-1 as well. And the reason, or at least one of the reasons, why the Packers were so dominant to start the season off was because of an explosive offense that scored 134 points through the first 5 games, which was an average of just under 27 points per game, which was the second best total in the NFL, only trailing the legendary Greatest Show on Turf and the St. Louis Rams, who had scored 142 points. And the man commanding the charge was one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play the sport, Brett Favre. I would be here all day if I listed every single accolade that Favre won in his career, from his 3 consecutive MVP awards in the 1990s, to his status on the Hall of Fame All-1990s team, to his Super Bowl win, to his 5 Pro Bowls at that point. So if you want to learn more about him and just how great he was, click the card in the upper right corner. But after what I guess would be a down year by his standards in 2000, he was looking like his usual self to start off the 2001 season. Through the first 5 games, he completed over 68% of his passes while throwing for 1,399 yards and 12 touchdowns, all while posting a passer rating of 102.9. And in their most recent game, a 31-23 victory at home against the defending Super Bowl champion Baltimore Ravens, Favre had one of the best games of his career, throwing 3 touchdowns with no interceptions, completing 79% of his passes, and posting a passer rating of 137.4. In other words, Favre was playing some of the best football of his career entering this all-important divisional matchup. And if there was any player that the Packers could not afford to lose, it should go without saying, but it's Brett Favre, because the offense and the team only went as far as he did. So would we get another great Favre performance in this game, like he had the previous week against Baltimore? Well, not quite. Everything about this game for the Packers was ugly with a capital U, because in a game that they had to have in order to maintain their hold on first place in the division, they did not meet the moment. By the halftime break, the Vikings had a commanding 20-0 lead, with one of those touchdowns coming courtesy of a pick 6 thrown by Brett Favre and into the hands of Kaylee Wong. This was the first and only touchdown of Wong's career, so as far as defensive touchdowns go, for your one highlight to be an interception of Brett Favre is not a bad way to do it. The Packers had 8 drives in the first half and couldn't score a single point. On 4 of Green Bay's first 11 drives, they either gained no yards or they lost yards. The Packers had just 4 of their first 11 drives go for at least 1 first down, as with the exception of a 2-yard touchdown pass by Favre to tight end Bubba Franks to open up the second half, the Packers got nothing going offensively. And defensively, the game was a nightmare as well. Minnesota ran for 200 yards and over 5.6 yards per carry. The Vikings picked up 23 first downs over the first 57 minutes of the game, compared to just 6 for the Packers in that same time frame. And for the first 57 minutes, the Packers held the ball for just 19 minutes. It didn't help that the Vikings had a touchdown drive in the fourth quarter that took up 14 plays and nearly 10 minutes. With 2 minutes and 47 seconds left, after Jim Kleinsaucer punched it in from 2 yards out to give the Vikings another touchdown, the Vikings were leading the game 35-7. This one was over. The Vikings were going to get back to 500. The Packers were going to lose their hold on first place in the division, and things were about to get interesting in the NFC Central as we headed to Halloween. Time for the Packers to just get out of there unscathed, run out the clock, or put in the backups. But Mike Sherman had other ideas. Because in his mind, his delusional mind, this one wasn't over. The Packers still had a shot at winning. It wasn't over when the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor, and it's not over now. And with that, he was about to do something incredibly stupid that nearly jeopardized the entire season. Before I go any further, I have to note that by this point in NFL history, there have been thousands upon thousands of games played. There have also been thousands upon thousands of blowouts. However, despite that large sample size, not once in NFL history had a road team come back from a deficit of 28 points or more. Not one road team had ever erased a 4-touchdown deficit. In fact, in regular season history, in all the regular season games played, the only time it ever happened was with the game you're watching right now, when the San Francisco 49ers, in a game against the New Orleans Saints on December 7th, 1980, somehow came back, erased a 35-7 deficit in the second half, and won a 38-35 in overtime on their home field. However, in that incredible comeback, which many consider the true beginning of the Joe Montana era, the Niners were only down 35-21 at the start of the fourth quarter. 14 points is a lot with 15 minutes left, but it's manageable. We've seen it before. Heck, in the famous comeback that happened in the 1992 wildcard between the Buffalo Bills and the Houston Oilers, yes, the Bills were down 35-3 in the second half, and that was before the 2-point conversion, so that was a 5-possession game. But by the start of the fourth quarter, They were only down 35-31. 4 points is nothing. That's anyone's game at that point. What I'm saying is that as rare as 28-point comebacks are, in the once-in-a-blue-moon moments where they do happen, it's a manageable ball game in the fourth quarter. It is not a 28-point deficit with less than 3 minutes to go. To come back from that would be literally unprecedented and would break all the rules of time and space. That's like no one ever shooting under a 60 at Augusta for the Masters and some guy coming in and shooting a 48. That's like no one ever hitting a field goal of 70+ yards and some guy coming in and breaking the record by hitting one from 95+ yards out. It is impossible. It is not going to happen. The game is literally over. I know it ain't over until the fat lady sings, but you would have to be deaf to not hear her. There is literally nothing good that can come from keeping your starters in the game, especially when you've got an MVP candidate and one of the greatest of all time at quarterback who has taken a beating, having already been hit 7 times during this game. So guess what Mike Sherman decides to do? He decides to leave Brett Favre in the game. Surely this won't backfire in any way whatsoever, right? Favre's had some big drives in his career before. The game-winning fourth quarter drive with under 2 minutes left beat the Detroit Lions 28-24 in the 1993 wildcard. The final drive ever at Milwaukee County Stadium in a 1994 game against the Atlanta Falcons, where he ran it in from 9 yards out with practically no time left to win it 21-17. But I think it's safe to say that this drive right here at the Metrodome, down by 28 points with under 3 minutes left, is the biggest drive he's ever had. At least, that's the only justification I can see for why Mike Sherman would be dumb enough to leave him in the game. However, to Favre's credit, nothing bad happens, even if Favre did take a sack on the drive to give the Packers just a bit of a scare. Yes, it was complete garbage time, but Favre did exactly what he had to do. He hit Ahman Green for a 15-yard gain to start the drive off, followed that up with a 14-yard pass to Corey Bradford to get the Packers across midfield, followed that up with a 26-yard pass to Antonio Freeman in what was by far the biggest catch that Antonio Freeman ever had in a game against the Minnesota Vikings, and followed that up with a 12-yard pass to William Henderson before culminating the drive with a 3-yard touchdown pass to Charles Lee to make it 35-13. Alright, at least the Packers can end this game on somewhat of a high note and have something to build off of, even if the game was a disaster from start to finish. I guess I was wrong. Favre didn't get hurt. And even though the Packers can't really win this game down by 22 points with 48 seconds left, they at least showed some signs of life, even if it was way too late. Now just kick the extra point to make it a 21-point game, and wait, why are they going for 2? Why are they going for 2? Why are they going for 2?
The Vikings play Tampa Bay. Favre is hit, and hit hard just as he let it go.
You just take it, and talking about taking it, look at Brett Favre take one here. It was to Lance Sawyer coming from his right side.
Of course he did. Brett Favre got hurt. He just had to go for 2 points down by 22 with under 50 seconds left in the game. Did that seem like a smart idea? Was that really worth it? Sure enough, Favre injured his elbow after getting hit by Vikings defensive end Talon Sawyer, giving Packers fans an absolute scare. Literally the one thing you couldn't have happen, win or lose, was to have your franchise quarterback get hurt. And for him to get hurt in a 22-point game with no time left is ridiculous. Naturally, after the game, the big talking point was about why the heck Brett Favre was still in the game when it was all but over. There better be a pretty good explanation for why Favre was still out there. Alas, there was not. Because prepare yourselves for one of the dumbest things I've ever heard a coach say. Remember that at the time the drive started, the Packers were down by 28 points with under 3 minutes left, and they were down by 22 with 48 seconds left. Sherman said, "I did all the math. I had backup quarterback Doug Peterson ready to go. And I'm thinking, well, if we do this, and kick an onside kick and score in one play, and take a shot here and there, I thought we still had an outside chance, which is probably a bit unrealistic." I'm sorry, what? What the heck kind of mumbo jumbo did I just hear you say? A little bit unrealistic, you think? For the Packers to win this game in the span of less than 3 minutes, assuming they want to win it in regulation, since that's the only reason you're going for 2 there. They would have needed to score a touchdown, get the 2-point conversion, recover the onside kick, score another touchdown, get the extra point, recover another onside kick, score another touchdown, get the extra point, recover another onside kick, and score another touchdown with the extra point. 4 touchdowns and 3 onside kicks, meaning you've got to go roughly 260 yards, and you have to do it in 3 minutes, all without the Vikings ever touching the ball. You could set all the sliders down on Madden and play on the easiest difficulty imaginable, and you're not pulling off a comeback like that. Was that really worth it to put your franchise quarterback at risk like that for a game that was literally impossible to win? And you genuinely thought you had a shot at winning? I know I've criticized coaches before for flat out admitting to the press and to their team that they weren't going to win, and you can learn more about one of those incidents by clicking the card in the upper right corner. But there is a massive difference in me criticizing that, where coaches are talking about that before the game even kicked off, and criticizing this, where you're down by 28 points with under 3 minutes left and 22 points with under 50 seconds left. But Sherman continued, saying, "I'd rather be faulted on being aggressive than conceding. As a competitor and as a coach, it's very difficult to concede, particularly when we have a quarterback like we have. If we have a slug back there and we just hand the ball off, I would have done it. But the guy gives you a chance to win. He has done amazing things in incredible situations. Let me assure you, Coach Sherman, not a single person in America would have faulted you for waving the white flag down by 4 touchdowns with 3 minutes left. And yes, Favre has done some incredible things before that we've never seen. No one is denying that. If this was a 2-possession game, I get it. Heck, even if this was a 3-possession game, I understand. But a 4-possession game, and a regular season game nonetheless, where you have to think about the future? Brett Favre could have all the Infinity Stones in his possession, and he is still not pulling this comeback off. Mike Sherman was supposedly one of the 31 brightest coaching minds in the world at the professional level, and he genuinely thought that his team had a realistic shot at coming back from this deficit, so much so that he was willing to sacrifice his franchise quarterback. Give me a break. Fortunately, the injury was not as bad as it could have been, as Sherman said that the doctors told him that he dodged a bullet with Favre's injury, as even though Favre got hurt, it wasn't as bad as it could have been. That allowed Favre's Iron Man streak to continue, however unlikely it might have been. But to say that Sherman received a ton of criticism for this delusion of his would be a massive understatement. And let me tell you, all of that criticism was entirely deserved. So what's the moral of the story here? If you have a franchise quarterback and you're down by 4 possessions with under a minute to go in the game, do not leave him in. Or if you're going to leave him in, just have him hand the ball off. Do not risk your franchise quarterback for a game that you cannot win. And yes, I have no problem with believing in your team and believing that they can pull off a comeback and never giving up until the final whistle sounds. But there are limits to this, and you have to be reasonable. Because if you're going to potentially put your entire season in jeopardy for a game that literally everyone in America but you knows you cannot win, you're an idiot, and you need to rethink how you do your math. Because on this October day in 2001, Green Bay Packers head coach Mike Sherman truly was, without any shadow of a doubt, the most delusional man in the United States of America. Get your official Jaguar Gator 9 merchandise by going to jg9shop.com, and be sure to like this video, ring the notification bell, and subscribe down below if you haven't already, as it helps the channel out a lot. And be sure to check out Twitch every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for your chance to play NFL trivia and win cash prizes. Link in the description below. If you want to see videos like this condensed down to 60 seconds, then follow me on TikTok at JaguarGator9. To see college football videos, subscribe to JaguarGator8. To see highlight videos of players throughout the history of the NFL, subscribe to JG9 Highlights. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. So you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.